Hey team, this is what we're going to be drawing this week, a 3D metal animal balloon thing, which looks pretty fun. It's way easier than it looks, and also I had a little play around today with a watercolour pencil, which is called Aquarellable, which you definitely can't see on the screen. So if you have any dark pencils that you've been dying to try, this is the opportunity to try it. In this class, you will need your 2H, your 2B, your eraser, your dark pencil, whether that's what I'm using or whether it's a 8B. And I don't need to just follow the video, go at it stage by stage, and just see how you get on. Feel free to pause the video at any time and do it at your own pace, or just download it and do it however you want. So enjoy this one. I had so much fun and I can't wait to see what you've done. So grab your pencils and let's get started. Okay, so let's start off by trying to get the rough perspective of the piece. So I'm just going to try and figure out where the front of the feet, if you can call them that, are and the back of them. Just figure out that angle. So I actually think it's a little bit taller. There we go. And then you kind of, let's just block out the front. And then we'll go try and find the angle of the thigh. It was very wrong saying thigh. And then the spine. And then let's maybe just try and get the back of the back thigh, followed by the tail, which points right. It's tempting to do the tail straight up, which is what I tried to do there. Actually, the tail goes right. And then even this line is right, but it's bigger at the top. So these two angles have to be just slightly tilted. And then if you move this across, you can see that the next line is tilted even more. And then I'm just going to triangle top that. And I can see if I go across, the ears are actually higher. So I'll just do a line to make sure I get them higher. And I just want to think about if this is the tail, this is the spine. So I'm looking at the gap and then I'm trying to get the angle of the neck, followed by the angle of the ears, which is round, but I'm trying to be very simple. So let's make this more of a cube. Okay, and then let's say this ear is here. And the next ear actually is a tiny bit taller. So I can get that in. And then the front part. Now that's a big snout. So again, both lines you got to think about the top and the bottom of this section. And the top one, is it flat or is it tilting down? I can see it's tilting down, and the other one needs to tilt more down. So I've got it more down. But is it enough? I actually think you need to be a tiny bit higher. And then I'm just going to triangle that bit, get the neck on. It's weird saying that as well. And then let's just try and roughly get the angles of the attachments. So the legs, you've got the split between the legs here. And then you've got a big chunky leg there. You've got the torso. You've got the backside. And then you've got this. Okay, so it might not be accurate at this stage, and that's absolutely fine. This is a point where it gives us something to work with and see whether our ears are big enough or the feet are fat enough. So spend a couple of minutes now and check your proportions, see if they work, and then when you're ready, we're going to work on to adding the shapes of the shadows. Okay, so I want to check my proportions a little bit, and I'm looking at this negative space in here, and I feel like it's a little bit too big. So that means either this needs to be bigger or this needs to move inwards just a little bit. So I always try and think of the smartest option, and I actually do think these legs could be a tiny bit bigger. So if I move this here, that there, then actually that means that's in the right position. So maybe let's try and make the neck a tiny bit bigger. And I'm sure when we start to add shapes there, that will just help with the space. Okay, it's not too bad. You know what? I'm just going to go for it, and I'm going to try and start to add the curves. So everything we've done so far has been very geometric. So things could change once we start to curve the edges. So let's spend a few minutes now just trying to soften the shapes and trying to think, okay, is it a curve? Is it a straight line? Are there actually any straight lines in this drawing? Not many, to be fair. So the more you start to add detail, the more you will discover the changes that need to be made. So here I'm already seeing that by curving the shape properly, this belly, the gap between the front and the back legs is too long. So annoyingly, I have to move this all a little bit to the left, but it's not too bad because once I've decided my, what do you call it? Once I've decided the gap, there we go. Then all I need to do is draw parallel lines across, and that will just help me to move the shape nice and easily. So move that across here, bring you across, which actually does help with that negative space at the top. Yeah, that feels better. Okay, so let's go back to the front. Nice juicy curve. Make sure these feet are stepped backwards, so that means they're not both touching the bottom. So just check yours and make sure your feet are one touching your pencil and one is lifted slightly higher. Okay, and with the negative space between this leg and the chin, it needs to be a lot closer. Maybe it just needs to be that big. Let's see. Let's continue going round. Get this little balloon bit here, and then a nice roundness. Yeah, maybe it doesn't need to be that big. Feels gigantic though, doesn't it? Okay, and then let's get this ear, and then the next one. Where do you end? End within the neck. I think that's a bit flat on top. There we go. And then roughly got that shape anyway. Let's just make this a little bit nicer. Get that back, and then we can start shaping the tail. That's the end of the balloon, so it needs to be like pinched at the back. Get a review. And then finally, think about the angle of this foot. Are you a bit chunky? Probably. Make that a bit smaller. Okay, and then just get rid of your excess lines. And you can see it all as one picture, and you can decide whether it needs any more work or you're fairly happy with your outline. Okay, so we've got the proportions, we've done the very generic sketching, and then we've refined the contours, and we're ready to separate light and dark. So stick with a 2B and let's try and draw the edge of any black shape. It's really going to help us with the realism and the easy, satisfying angle of drawing this wonderful sculpture. Yes. Okay, so I'm literally just looking for the edge of black shapes. See it as really abstract objects, and it doesn't matter where you start. I'm just going to start back here. So if you're left-handed and you start this side, then you get to work across, but you might smudge it. Even if I'm right-handed, if I work this way, I still end up smudging a little bit, but our 2B is nice and strong, so it shouldn't really smudge that much. If you were using an 8B, then yes, it would smudge an awful lot. Okay, so I've got the general shape there. It's a nice little person in here. Creepy. Don't know whether I'll put the person in it or not, but let's see. I'll just draw the outline anyway. Okay, there's a bit of black shape here. Goes round the shape, and then we have a bit of a darker grey. I'll just include that because it is part of the shape. And the most important thing within this black shape is these highlights. So let's try and get the highlights in. There's a nice highlight through there, and one that continues down there. In the petite, dare I say. Let's go around here. Okay, good. Now in the belly, the triangle goes around here. Area, black area, try just see that. It's quite hard, there's a lot going on in here. And then there's a little section down here, so again, a bit of a triangle with a little shape inside. And we've got shape like goes all the way across, stretches very wide. Think about where it stops between the bottom curve and the black shape, and then add the highlight. Should you be a bit higher? Part of the leg, so the gap between the black shape and the edge is thinner at the top, and then it's thicker at the bottom, it's wider at the bottom. So put that on. These highlights, make sure if they have shape, have the shape. Little creepy thing in there, and then let's go for neck piece with the neck light. Yeah, I tried to make that funny, but it wasn't. Neck highlight, neck light, that didn't work. Some weird thing down there. The final leg goes around very tightly, and then there's a big step and a curve, and then there is highlight in there, and then in the ear you put practically a straight line, and then go round close to the edge. So obviously this person used two big photography lights because you can see them in everything. And then this creepy person in the middle. I might just make that gradient. It's just weird adding a person. It's not weird, it's challenging, and that's how you get the good artists from the bad, because I don't want to be lazy and not add them. So I'm doing this for me, for fun, not for a competition. So we'll see. Okay, let's get that there. Ooh, interesting, Charlie. You've gone for the highlights first, and then you've gone for the dark. So not too bad. A little bit off, but there we go. So you could do it that way. You could draw the highlights in first, and then the dark shapes. Nothing wrong with that. But we're nearly at the end of this section, and I told you to do it the other way. So up to you. Whether you watch this first and then you're like, oh, actually, it makes more sense to draw the highlights first. But please don't judge me. Okay, another two photography lamps and a creepy person in the middle. Is that it? Yeah, great, that's it. Every section is done. Okay, so now we've got the shapes of our shadows. It should be way easier to shade. So I'm actually going to introduce a different type of pencil because I want to have fun this year and I want to play around. And this is called a aquarellable. There you go, aquarellable. It's probably not in focus. And I think that means I can wet it after I've shaded with it. So I'm going to do this in the black areas, and I'm not sure if I'll do it in the light areas, but if you don't have a weird black that you want to try, by all means just use an 8B pencil and that'll be fine, but we're aiming for the darkest of darks in our darks. So let's see what I decide to do with the pencil, whether I wet it or not. Okay, so I'm right-handed, so that means I'm going to start on the left and work my way over to the right. It just means I'm going to be smudging less because it'll be heavier on this side and lighter on that side. So if you're left-handed, start on the right side and move over to the left. So at the very tip, we have a bit of black that goes around there, right on the bottom here, and then right over here. So whether you're using a weird and wonderful black that you've not tried before, charcoal, pencil, aquarellable, whatever I'm using, you want to make sure that this is the darkest it can possibly be. So I'll give a little review as well of this as a actual pencil, and we'll see how it goes, because once I start, I kind of have to commit to it. Could be a good idea, could be a bad idea. But it feels like a crayon. It's quite grainy. It's not the best as a pencil if I'm comparing it to an 8B, but I'm sure it's going to have great properties when I add a little bit of water and a brush. It's actually quite exciting. Oh my god, I forgot to draw the outline in here. Even though it's not black, it should still be drawn. Get that around there. There we go. Oh, and the highlight, obviously, China. There we go. And it does have a bit of a black edge. Wow, it needs sharpening already, so make sure it stays sharp. So work your way around the shape. just identifying the black bits. And when you start shading, do not do anything other than black, okay? If it's medium grey, fine, we can deal with that later, but we are looking for the black bits, and that means you have got to push. So don't be afraid of the dark, my friends. The dark is our friend in this particular drawing. In all drawings, we should always strive to be very dark in our shading. So have fun with this stage. Pressure's off, we've done our outlines, we've done our measuring and our proportions, and now all we're doing is colouring in the gaps. So enjoy, and I'll catch you after this section. Okay, so I've got one of these watercolour brushes which holds water in it, and it's really good because we have a really fine tip. It is artificial hairs, which sometimes with something super accurate, this is a good shout. So all I'm going to do is just wiggle the brush because the water is going to be moving from my water jar, and just wiggling all of that together. And to be honest, that is fucking sweet. Look how dark that is. So let's get these incredibly black bits on there. Blend it. Wow, that's so dark. I love it. But the question is, how do I transition that from dark to medium to light? And that is future China's problem, which I don't want to worry about just yet because I really want to enjoy the satisfaction of this stage. Wow. If you haven't gone online and bought one of these pencils already, you absolutely have to. What a fucking joy. Oh, and the brush as well. This is amazing. Whoa. Okay, ooh, what should we do next? Right, let's do this. If you don't have one of these brushes, to be honest, I'll just watch for the satisfaction element because this is not for everyone's preferred taste. Plus, this might actually end up going terribly in the next stage, so we don't know just yet. But for now, this is very fun, and I definitely will do something with these again. My goodness. So I'm just going to fast forward this. Okay, so what I'm about to try and do is I might just use this brush to try and blend into the lighter bits. We'll see how it goes because it could be too dark, and if you're using pencil, use the same for your pencil. So try and go from the darker bits to the lighter section, but I'm just going to try one little section first with a brush, see how it goes. So I haven't cleaned the brush, it's still got the dark pigment on it from the little sections, and if I need to pick up any more paint, you see it just kind of wakes up the soluble pencil anyway, and that just means the areas around it are naturally going to just give you a little bit of paint that you need. So that is actually pretty fucking good. And if you're using pencil, then just still use your 8B, because that's going to give you the darkness that it needs, and you need to do it in fairly solid chunks. So you see I'm not really adding a huge amount of detail in my sections. Instead, I'm just trying to get this medium tone from black to dark grey and leave those highlights pure white. We don't want to put anything in those highlights. Wow, this is so nice to like smooth out the edges once it's dry, because obviously it just wakes up the paint again. Oh, this is sick. I'm gonna just borrow some black from here, make this section darker. Wow, I think I'm slightly obsessed with this. Okay, so work in this section now with the medium to dark greys, because we've done our darkest greys and now we're trying to find the next darkest bit, and we're just going to add those in. So I'll fast forward this again so you don't have to hear me talking to myself, and you can skip to the end and see exactly what I mean. or you can just watch this for 30 seconds just to watch the process and then do it yourself. Completely up to you how you want to approach this, but have fun. It should be very, very satisfying, and you should be getting a lot of work done in such a short amount of time. So team, enjoy. Okay, so I'm actually very pleased and proud that I took the gamble to use a aquarella pencil thing. First of all, the darks are really dark. It's easy to get the medium greys and very quick as well, because all I'm doing is stealing a little bit of paint from one section and then just spreading it over, and you don't get that sharp edge where the paint is dried and you try and blend it in and it ends up just being like a straight line going through it. So very happy overall. Now what I want to do is try and add the light greys, and I will use a pencil for this because it has more of a metallic feel. I'm going to use my 2B, and I'm going to go really carefully with a nice sharp pencil. So let's try and add that now, and I think it's going to look really fucking good. Okay, so make sure my pencil is sharp, and again, because I'm right-handed, I will start at the furthest point and then head over to the left. So I am looking for big smooth areas, big gradients, and I want to try and fill them in, and I will worry about the texture afterwards. So let's just work on trying to get as much shaded in as possible. So I'll just work my way through each section, and I just want to be very mindful of the different textures, because obviously watercolour, accidental watercolour and paper, but both applied in the way of a pencil. So it's going to be interesting. I just obviously need to ask myself, is there any white that isn't a highlight? And the answer is no. So really, I should just try and get rid of all of the white as much as possible. So that's what I'll do instead. I'll do a light layer of shading on all of the figure except the highlights, and that's just going to make the highlights look nice and bright. We can do the gradients after. So go ahead, go over your highlights, go over your lightest areas really lightly, and that's going to bring everything together in a beautiful way. Okay, so I want to switch to my 2H pencil, just because it's looking very grainy and it's hard to see the tone of the artwork. So all I want to do is use my 2H, very gently shade on top of what I've just done, and hopefully that is just going to bring that value together. You can already see the difference between this tiny section up here. It does smooth the texture so much. So it's not really much darker, but it just seems way more consistent. So do a layer now with your 2H. We can do the final touches right at the end. Right, so I've done the block shading for the light bits, and I actually think the silver of the pencil with the black of the paint pencil looks very nice. So the final step to do is to add the gradients, because on most of the objects, the legs, the belly, the sections, they have curved edges, and it means that the outside is darker, and as we go round to the front, it's lighter. So we need to make sure every section is accurate with its own gradients. So grab your 2B, you can use your 8B as well, and just let's add the final bits of detail and make this puppy look nice and realistic. Okay, so I'll start with my 2B just to see how dark it can go, and if it can't go dark enough on the edges, then I will switch to my 8B, but I think this should give me the right amount of range. So let's just work on that. Yeah, I think that goes dark enough. So the very edge in this section is the darkest, and then it needs to be a gradient coming forward, and there's still going to be abstract shapes to look at and to play with. So make sure you see any extra highlights that aren't white, but maybe they're value 2. So just off-white, see there's a nice little section. And then the whole rest of the next part is basically a highlight as well. So just need to make sure I get this lovely little white bit there. And it's a little bit darker on the front. So in all of your sections, you will have change in shade at many points. So you have to be really attentive. Very hard to say. Ooh, now I've gone darker than the highlight. Sorry, not the highlight, the dark bit. So in that case, I can just pick up a little bit of the black. Just go along here. Make sure that's darker in the pencil. Nice. So don't be afraid to go back into any of your work when you need to. It's always good to push things further rather than just accept defeat. But it's hard to see everything from the get-go. So often the more you look and the more you work at something, the more you'll see tweaks that need to be made. So work your way around your drawing now. I don't know if we should call it drawing or painting. And just work on all your edges, all your gradients. And I hope you really enjoy doing it because I am absolutely loving this drawing. And I hope you are too. So I'm going to fast forward it so I don't bore you to death again. And I will chat to you at the end of this section. That was a cracking one, if I do say so myself. So I hope you had fun. I hope you had a fun dark pencil to play with as well. And yeah, let's see what we draw in a couple of weeks' time. All right, folks, catch you later.